Argentina had just beaten England 2-1 in the World Cup semi-finals. Then during the celebrations, two Argentine players displayed a banner carrying four explosive words: Las Malvinas son Argentinas, which means the Malvinas are Argentine. The British government called for FIFA to investigate, but why can four words about a remote group of islands almost 13,000 kilometers away from Britain still cause such an intense reaction? To understand this, we would need to look beyond the football and go back nearly 200 years. Let's talk about geography first. These islands are known in Britain as the Falkland Islands. Argentina calls these Islas Malvinas. They are a collection of islands in the South Atlantic, about 480 kilometers from Argentine mainland, but roughly 13,000 kilometers from Britain. Around 3,500 people live there. The islands manage most of their own internal affairs, while Britain is responsible for defense and foreign relations. On a map, Argentina's argument can feel obvious. The islands are close to its coast, while Britain is on the other side of the Atlantic. But sovereignty is not decided by distance alone, and the history of these islands is unusually complicated. So, how the dispute began. So before Europeans established settlements, the islands had no permanent indigenous population. During the 18th century, France, Britain, and Spain all established settlements there at different times. Britain founded a settlement at Port Egmont in the 1760s. Spain controlled another settlement on East Falkland. Britain withdrew from its settlement in 1774 but insisted that leaving did not mean surrendering its claim. Spain continued administering its settlement until 1811. Then came the Argentinian independence. Argentina declared independence from Spain in 1816 and argued that it inherited Spain's territorial rights in the region. The capital formally asserted possession of the islands in 1820, and an Argentine-backed settlement developed. Britain maintained that its earlier claim had never disappeared. In 1833, a British warship arrived and removed the Argentine military authorities. British administration was then established and has continued ever since, with one major exception: the Argentine occupation during the 1982 war. That movement in 1833 remains the historical center of the entire dispute. Now let's talk about the dispute in further detail. So Argentina describes the 1833 as an illegal colonial seizure. Its argument is that the islands passed from Spain to newly independent Argentine state and were then taken by force. Britain's position is that it possessed an earlier claim, never legally abandoned that claim, and has administered the islands for almost 2 centuries. Britain and the islanders also emphasized that there was no indigenous population displaced by British settlement. The islanders add a third argument: whatever happened in the 19th century, these islands are now their home, and they should not be transferred to a country they have not chosen. So the disagreement is not simply about what happened. Both sides can look at many of the same dates and documents, yet construct completely different national stories from them. Let's talk about the opinion of the United Nations on this matter. In 1965, the UNGA formally recognized that a sovereignty dispute existed between Argentina and the United Kingdom. It invited both governments to negotiate a peaceful solution. But this point is important because the resolution did not declare either country to be the rightful owner. Argentina emphasizes that the United Nations treats the issue as a sovereignty and decolonization issue. It argues that its territorial integrity was violated in 1833. Britain argues that the people who actually live on the islands possess a right to self-determination and cannot simply be handed to another country. That produces the central legal and moral tension. Should Argentina's claimed territorial integrity carry more weight, or should the present population's right to choose its government carry more weight? Now let's talk about what happened in 1982. By 1982, decades of diplomacy had failed to resolve the dispute. Argentina was then governed by a deeply unpopular military dictatorship facing economic and political crisis. On the 2nd of April, Argentine forces invaded and occupied the islands. The Argentine leadership appeared to have expected Britain either to accept the takeover or to negotiate. Instead, Margaret Thatcher's government sent a naval task force across the Atlantic. The UNSC demanded an Argentine withdrawal, but diplomacy failed to prevent war. Over the following 10 weeks, British and Argentine forces fought at sea, in the air, and across the islands. Britain sank the Argentine cruiser General Belgrano. Argentine aircraft struck British ships, including HMS Sheffield, using bombs and Exocet missiles. British troops eventually landed, advanced across East Falklands, and surrounded Stanley. On the 14th of June, Argentine forces formally surrendered. The war lasted 74 days. 649 Argentine military personnel, 255 British personnel, and 3 Falkland Islanders were killed. 907 lives in total. Argentina's dictatorship soon collapsed. Margaret Thatcher's political position was strengthened. Britain dramatically increased the island's defenses. The fighting had ended, but the sovereignty dispute had not. Now, this is where it gets interesting. About 4 years later, Argentina faced England in the quarterfinal of the 1986 World Cup. In this match, Diego Maradona scored both the infamous Hand of God and the goal later celebrated as the goal of the century. For many Argentines, that victory carried emotional meaning far beyond football. Maradona himself later connected the match with the memory of the war. That does not mean, however, that every Argentina match is a continuation of the war, but it does mean that the rivalry carries historical memories that an ordinary football match does not. So the 2026 banner was not random. It connected victory over England with one of Argentina's most powerful national causes. Today, the islands remain an internally self-governing British overseas territory. In a 2013 referendum, 1,513 voters supported maintaining that status. Only 3 voted against it, with turnout of around 92%. British and the islanders described that result as an overwhelming act of self-determination. Argentina rejects the referendum. Its argument is that Britain cannot settle a territorial dispute through a vote conducted mainly among the descendants of people established under British rule. There are also major economic interests. Fishing is crucial to the island's economy, while offshore oil could make the surrounding waters substantially more valuable. The Sea Lion project received its final investment decision in December 2025, with first oil targeted for 2028. But resources did not create this dispute, they simply make an unresolved sovereignty question more consequential. British control is therefore clear. The wishes of the islanders are also clear. Yet Argentina's claim remains embedded in its constitution, its foreign policy, and its national identity. So, who owns the Falklands? Britain administers and defends the islands. The present population overwhelmingly wants that relationship to continue, but Argentina sees an unfinished colonial seizure and national wound. The United Nations recognizes that a sovereignty dispute exists, but it does not award it to either side. So the UN doesn't award sovereignty to either Britain or Argentina. That is why this cannot be explained simply by pointing at a map. Argentina sees territorial integrity, the islanders see their home and their right to choose, and Britain sees a commitment to protect that choice. And that is why 4 words on a football banner can reopen a dispute that began nearly 2 centuries ago. So, which principle, according to you, should carry more weight here? Territorial integrity or self-determination? If you enjoy understanding history behind today's headlines, please subscribe to the channel. That is exactly what this channel is going to explore.